Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Audio Advice live stream and giveaway, where today we're joined by some of our good friends over at MoFi, Wharfedale, Aaron's Audio Corner, some of the best people out there. So we're super excited to have them. We'll get to introductions in a moment, but just before we kick it all off, we are going to be announcing the giveaway at the end of the show. We're going to go over the prizes, but this is a Q&A platform, so hang out. Hopefully it'll be some fun conversation for you. We are going to have a prize for best question asked. So John's going to get that to here get to that in here in a little bit. But let's go ahead and kick it off. So Peter, do you want to start and introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm Peter Como. I'm Director of Acoustic Design for Wharfedale, which means I really get my hand in all the speaker designs and have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, so I prefaced all this ahead of time. If you guys have any hard questions, we're going to direct them all at Peter because he probably has the answer to it. So, and this could be around anything Wharfedale related. We like to keep it open. So awesome, and we'd like to start these off with a fun question. So Peter, I'm going to bounce it off of you first. So if you had to have one album to kind of use as your reference album when demoing, speakers, amplifiers, anything along those lines, what do you think it would be?
That's a bit like Desert Island Discs, where you have to choose
Yeah.
one out of 10 discs to take to you. I think, although it might seem a bit weird considering everybody's into audiophile recordings a lot of the time, but Ricky Lee Jones is the one I'd take. Last Chance Texaco is one of my go-to tracks for just testing out sheer enjoyment and pace and detail. I mean, it's got everything going for it.
Awesome. Well, good choice. Well, we'll go over to Aaron next. John, will save you best for last.
Save the best for last. Yeah. So I'm Aaron Hardison. I am just a dude who has a YouTube channel, and I talk about speakers. It's my passion. I love doing it. I do a lot of them with objective data, and I mix in my subjective listening impressions with the objective data. And this isn't my day job, so this is why I'm not a professional. My favorite album, I'm with Peter. I don't like the typical audiophile music, jazz music, orchestral music. Just doesn't really do it for me. I think if I have a Desert Island album, it's going to be this one. It's going to be Dire Straits, but it's going to be the MoFi remaster pressings, and that's not me kissing up. That's the honest truth. I like this album because wide variety of instruments. It's got a little bit of thump between like 60, 80 hertz, a little bit more than the original did. So I appreciate that. And it's also very dark, I guess, if you will, in terms of there's a lot of silence in the album. So you have a lot of dynamic range as well. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, another good pick, another solid one. So John, you want to round us off here?
Sure. I'm Jonathan Durda with MoFi Distribution. So as Aaron mentioned, we have Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab, one of our sister companies that's been remastering records since the 70s. But for MoFi Distribution, we're an importer of many brands like Wharfedale, Leak, which I have a pair of Leak loudspeakers next to me here, Quad, of course, one of the most legendary brands in audio, all of which Peter's been a great shepherd for and a steward of those brands for many years. One of my go-to tracks, it is more traditional. Ella Fitzgerald from Clap Hands, Here Comes Charlie. The track is called I Got a Guy. I use that as my first track every time we get new products in for evaluation. It's all about the human voice element for me and just getting to know that recording so well. Bass response can vary with rooms, but if you don't have the mid-range right, there's something else going on with your system. So that within a minute of playing that song, you can kind of tell if something's going to be good or not. So that's been a consistent reference of mine for many years.
Yeah, that's a good one. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick Rich. I typically work in home theater design, but I'm a 2-channel geek, final nerd, all of that. So jack of all trades when it comes to audio. But if I had to pick I kind of go year to year. Whatever I'm kind of listening to on repeat is my current reference track. So this year so far, I've been listening to a lot of, there's what's called the Pizza Tapes, and it's from Jerry Garcia and Tony Rice. Absolutely wonderful album. So I had a chance to get in the Super Dentons now for about 2 weeks, and I've just listened to that album about nonstop on there. So I absolutely love it. Brought it down to my main system, and yeah, there's definitely some magic in the speakers. So well, without leading on from that, Peter, do you kind of want to introduce the Super Dentons, our kind of giveaway prize?
Yeah, Super Denton was a really fun project for me. The original Denton was one of Wharfedale's best-selling speakers, and I was very interested in taking a speaker that we designed for Wharfedale's 80th anniversary, which was my reincarnation of the Denton, if you like, and boosting it to what we call a super status, which in this case was emulating what Wharfedale had done with the Denton originally, which was to turn it into the world's smallest three-way loudspeaker. So we did some experimentation, a lot of prototyping, and then found that if we took the Wharfedale 2-inch mid-range and slotted that into the speaker, it worked really well. It was a great combination. So there you have it. It's a very compact speaker, but it's got all the attributes of a three-way. And in other words, the mid-range keeps what Jonathan was looking for, and that is tremendous vocal clarity, leaving the bass unit and treble unit to do their own thing.
Yeah. Like I said, I've had a chance to play with these speakers. Just for those of you who haven't seen it, here we go. We got a picture of these pulled up. So I've had a chance to play with these over the past couple weeks, and whoever gets these are super lucky. So we'll be announcing that towards the end of the show. But we also have a prize for best question. So make sure you get those questions in, and we'll talk about it. So John, do you want to tell us about the best question prize?
So best question prize will be a spin clean record cleaning device, the Beatles Special Edition, which is available in red or blue. Winner's pick there. And great way to clean your vinyl. Super effective and easy to do. Tucks away in a IKEA calyx very nicely, so it doesn't take up a lot of space. Great American brand, Spin Clean, been around a long time, so excited to give one of these away.
Yeah. I mean, these are a classic in most record stores, even around here. Absolutely love them. So we'll go ahead and get this kicked off with some questions. So let's see. What is the reason and/or advantage for having 2 ports on the back of the cabinet versus 1?
Well, whenever you design a ported loudspeaker, you actually start to work out with different ideas on what's going to work best. The problem with a small cabinet is you don't have a lot of room for what I would call a well-designed large port, and it just so happens with the smaller cabinets like this that particular combination that we use of twin ports seems to work really well for a speaker which is actually designed to go reasonably close to a rear wall. And when you start changing ports and working with prototypes, that's when you find that just by listening to different types of music, which system works best. And it just so happened that worked really well in the Denton.
Awesome. So let's see. John or Aaron, you guys have anything to add to that?
Well, I'll tee up Aaron. One thing I love about Aaron's channel is he talks about how room interaction affects speakers, and he's always showing those cool graphs on his videos that, hey, this is the distance from the wall where the speaker really coupled to my room the best. I think a lot of that gets kind of lost on the marketing side of high-end audio, right? We don't really get into the nuts and bolts so much. So I think Aaron's doing a great service helping people with that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I try.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it's one of those things that the first thing that somebody always says when they see a picture of a speaker, they're like, oh, it's too close to the wall, or it's, you need to move those out into the room, which most of the time isn't convenient and most of the time isn't true, because you can find a nice balance. And there's a point in every room where it's going to sound better, closer, or further away. So I completely agree. So let's jump on to some other ones here. So most bookshelf speakers are 2-way. What's the benefit of having a 3-way? Is there a caveat?
Well, and the advantage of a three-way is that you've got one drive unit handling the mid-range, so it's handling the majority of the upper range of the vocals, plus all the harmonics just coming out of one unit. And the most important thing is that it's not disturbed by having to handle bass frequencies. So in the two-way speaker, the mid-range is coming out of the bass unit, which in a small speaker, the bass unit is going to move a lot in order to generate enough bass power in the room. And when it's moving a lot, then it is actually moving out of its linear range at the extremes of the excursion. And that does affect the mid-range distortion. I mean, I think, Aaron, you remarked on how low the distortion was on this speaker.
Mm-hmm.
We get that by actually having the three-way speaker with every drive unit perfectly adapted to the range that it's got to cover. Now, the caveat is that instead of one crossover point, you've got two crossover points. And crossovers are the heart of the speaker. So it's always difficult to design a crossover which makes the drive units blend so well that it doesn't sound like there are separate drive units in front of you. It just sounds as though there's one drive unit. That takes a lot of work. We put thousands, literally thousands of hours of listening into the crossovers we design. And having two crossover points practically doubles the amount of work that we've got to do. But I think at the end of the day, it's worthwhile.
Yeah. I mean, the vocal clarity on these is fantastic. And actually, I saw a question that kind of will relate to this. So now that you have a mid-range in the sequence, you guys have your tweeter asymmetrically placed within the speaker. So see, the Lintons are specific to left and right. Maybe the same for the Denton. Not really a question, but it kind of brings up an interesting topic that we talked about ahead of time. So would you say that there is a specific orientation to these where you would have to have one left or right, or is there a best case scenario for it?
Generally, we recommend you start off with the mid-range units inboard. So the reason for that is because the mid-range unit's doing most of the work through the important frequency range. Having said that, there are odd occasions where particular room effects will, especially reflections from the sidewalls, may affect things. Because if you've got the mid-range towards the center, you've got the treble units firing outwards towards the sidewalls more. And sometimes that can sound a bit harsh, in which case swap them around, have the treble units on the inside.
Got it. And Aaron, whenever you tested these, do you remember which orientation you preferred them in?
I was so afraid that you were going to ask that question. I got to be honest, I really don't. Well, I listened to them in both configurations, but I can't remember which one I liked the most, and I can't remember which way I tested them. I really should have gone back and looked, but I was busy at work. I will say that in some ways, having those different configurations allow you a little bit more flexibility in terms of room setup. I tend to find that I like a speaker that has when I listen to a speaker with an asymmetrical layout horizontally, well, maybe that's vertically. I tend to find that having the mid-range on the outside to me is more preferable because it spreads out that soundstage a little bit more, and I like a wider soundstage for the most part. And as far as putting the tweeter inside, or outside, I guess I don't feel like it's as necessary. But if for some reason you prefer one or the other, you have the flexibility to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whenever you were designing the speaker, is there a reason that you guys didn't just make the cabinet taller and you put it up there on the top symmetrically? Do you prefer the asymmetrical design, or is there something along those lines?
No, I don't prefer the asymmetrical design. In fact, when we introduced these speakers, one of the reviewers that I've known for 30 odd years said to me, "Peter, you normally prefer a vertical format for your drive units. How did you make this work?" I just made it work. Again, by having the mid-range unit handling a wide bandwidth, it does work. But we didn't want to make the cabinet any bigger than necessary.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to continue this story of the world's smallest three-way speaker. And I think we've tested this in small rooms and large rooms. It works equally as well. It's not very room dependent, and I think it fulfills its role admirably in that respect.
Yeah, no, I agree. I tested it. So I actually have them upstairs in my living room right now because I'm going to be really sad the day that they have to leave my house. But I tested them up there as well as in my theater, which I have acoustic panels and the room's treated, and more of your traditional audiophile room. And oddly enough, because I bring a lot of speakers back and forth, I almost preferred them in my living room because of how flexible they were. And so we've listened to dozens of albums up there since we've had them in. So they're a fantastic living room speaker, and they look really nice. Yeah, just a small little check mark there. But let's see, we had another question here. Can you recommend a preamp and amp setup for the Dentons? And I want to transition this over into something, but in the meantime, what do you guys kind of recommend in terms of power? Do you have a preferred matching brand, anything like that?
Well, you've got them pictured with the Leak 230. I mean, that does work together really well. I just introduced at the Bristol show this February the Quad 33303. If you're looking for a preamp and a power amp combination that works really well with them, that's an absolutely stunning one.
The nice thing about Wharfedale's, they kind of go with everything. We carry some brands in our own portfolio that are very kind of picky on what electronics you should drive them with. We have customers that use inexpensive AVRs to drive Wharfedale, Super Dentons, Super Lintons, and it sounds great. I think there's just something in the way, and maybe Peter, you can speak to this, that the way you voice the products and how easy they are to drive, that they seem to be pretty gear agnostic overall. You can certainly scale up and get better and better, but you don't need to spend a whole bunch of money on special components to get them to sing.
No, well, I've never believed in designing speakers which give amplifiers a hard time. I mean, what's the point? I don't know what amplifiers you guys are going to use when you buy a pair of speakers. So I try to make speakers which don't drive amplifiers crazy, and that means that they're widely compatible.
That's a good plus.
Yeah.
I will say, I was going to say this a minute ago, but my brain is so in a fog right now. I'm starving. To answer the question, or go back to answer some of the question about the three-way benefit, the one thing that I've noticed a lot is when you have a three-way speaker, for the most part, you tend to get rid of that head and device aspect. Like typical two-way speakers, if you're not sitting right on that tweeter axis or the reference axis where the speaker was designed to listen to, it's kind of dicey, right? Like you're usually going to have some suck out or something in that mid-range to tweeter handover region. But with the three-way, you don't have that. And I did go back and look at my data earlier. And with this speaker, you have like almost double the vertical range that you can listen within and still have a similar tonality as you would if you listen directly on the tweeter, on the reference axis in this case. So that's one benefit for sure as well, just from the consumer standpoint.
Mm-hmm. And what's the benefit of a wider vertical response if in a real world application?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just we say head and device, right? So when you sit down and you listen, when you're trying to critically listen, sometimes you're straining so hard to stay upright, like you just lose all the emotion and feeling of listening to music, right? So if you can actually just kind of relax in the music and not have to worry about my ears have to be at this exact location, I think it's just more enjoyable.
Yeah, for sure. I use it a lot in theater. I mean, obviously, these aren't set up to be an exact theater speaker in terms of standard footprint, but I think about it a lot in theater use case whenever you're building a riser and things like that.
For sure.
Well, we'd love the audience's feedback if we should make a heritage center channel, because there's a bit of internal debate about that.
Do it.
I want the comment section to go ahead and just say yes.
Got Aaron's blessing.
Do it. Two mids on the side, and then a mid-range and a tweeter right above it, or just to stick with the. If you do a Denton, you could put the tweeter off to the side just to stick with the asymmetry.
Yeah,
I definitely say do it, but please don't do two on the side and a tweeter dead in the middle.
No MTM configuration, right?
Thank you.
I think that's the beauty of that dome mid-range too. That would be very sweet in a center channel.
Yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be cool.
No, I completely agree. I don't want to go off on a tangent because I'm
Not that
opinionated
Peter
on
doesn't
this.
have enough work already, but
Yeah. Well, there's really, in this sort of style of speaker, there's not really many people that pay attention in a sort of the home theater format. And, somebody specialized in theater, I completely agree. And actually, I did test these. So on the preamp, bring this back to the preamp amp, I tested these in my theater on an AVR, another integrated amplifier, and the Leak Stereo 230. I think that they definitely performed well with all of them. I preferred the Stereo 230, actually, to the point where my team might chime in here. I like sang the praises in our group chat. I was like, this is an amazing integrated amplifier. Absolutely enjoyed it. I have it set up upstairs with HDMI ARC. Also ran a turntable through it, so I did all the paces and love it. I love the I guess the technical term is like a motorized volume control rather than a digital volume control. So whenever you're hitting the remote, you're watching it go up. It's a great piece. And John, have you had a chance to? I assume you have had a chance to play with it. What do you think are some of the standout attributes?
I think the fact that it's a Class AB amplifier in this price range with a good amount of power is already making it kind of a rare breed nowadays, as everything is kind of going Class D or alternative amplifier topology. So it does have that kind of more traditional, warmer, natural sound to it, yet still great clarity, good control over the loudspeakers. Just look at it though. That's when Jamie from IAG, the parent company of Leak, and Wharfedale showed us this. This was during COVID, and we did a Zoom call. Both my colleague and I said, "Oh, we want that. I don't even need to hear it. Just look at it." And it turns out it sounds as good as it looks. So we're very happy with Leak. Lots of happy owners out there. The 230, it's just a jack of all trades, yet it still masters its core competencies of, hey, this is a really good sounding amplifier.
Yeah.
And a special shout out to the phono preamp too. I think the built-in phono preamp, which is rare in most components, that's usually an afterthought. It's actually quite good in the League.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I've got a soft spot for kind of vintage looking gear. I got my start with a Yamaha CR 2020 and a pair of Ohm speakers. So yeah, I always like getting back to that. I thought they could keep up, but they never could with most new audio. But so let's see. So this was something that I wanted to ask you guys about. Being a smaller bookshelf speakers, would you recommend a matching subwoofer with it?
Yeah, I'm in two minds about subwoofers. Over here in Europe, I think we have more solid walls than you guys do in the US. So we tend to get a pretty good amount of bass power in the room without it leaking out through the walls. But I understand that, I've heard some systems over in the US, and I understand you have what I would call bass leaky rooms. So it seems that, you definitely prefer having a subwoofer in order to bolster that low end. But please, when you put in a subwoofer, dial the crossover point down fairly low, and dial the volume down low as well. My belief is that you shouldn't be able to hear a subwoofer, but you should be aware when you switch it off. That's the ideal. If when you switch it on, it's obvious, then it's doing too much.
Yeah.
Totally
If you want to hear what the speaker's really doing, then just have the subwoofer just fill in that very, very bottom end. And the Super Dentons, they go down, positioned reasonably close to a wall. They'll go down to 40 hertz. So you're only filling in below that, really.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's going to be room size dependent. I specialize in theater, so I use subwoofers 99% of the time in my setups. So, it's one of those things that I think that with integrated amplifiers, it can be challenging because you don't have an active crossover in there. And so, people are just trying to find where the speaker rolls off. And oftentimes you can just create a very separate sounding subwoofer. So I think that the 2-channel community kind of has a weird relation with subwoofers, but I like to be able to hear the full frequency range and for it to be smooth, which is easier said than done a lot of the time.
But for
Yeah.
audio visual, you'll need it because there's a lot of
Yeah.
power down there. Yeah.
Yeah, and a dedicated LFE channel, so you basically have to on those.
Yeah, and it's not even just about getting better extension. It's also, you can lighten the load on your mains, right? So you can
Mhm.
increase the dynamic range, you can increase the output capability.
Hmm.
So there's definitely benefits. It's just really hard to set up a subwoofer correctly.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, very placement dependent, but that's also a good thing, is you can place it, but oftentimes it's not going to be convenient in in all rooms.
Right.
Let's see, jumping over. So, how does the retro style design of the Denton's super speakers influence their acoustic performance, particularly with the rear ported bass reflex cabinet?
Well, I mean, I think we've sort of covered the rear ported thing.
Yeah.
The reason for putting ports around the back actually is to reduce the audible distortion that you get from ports. All ports leak a bit of mid-range out the cabinet. They also produce a little bit of distortion from the high pressure air in the port exiting into the low pressure air in the room. So we put the ports around the back in order to overcome that. So the speaker is actually a baffle for the port. In terms of the retro styling, normally you design a speaker so that the front baffle is nice and smooth. With the retro styling, of course, the front baffle is inset. But actually, we found that if we design the grill correctly, so we design the grill as an acoustic element of the speaker, and when we design the grill correctly, it actually gets over all these problems and produces a really good performance. So we spend probably as much time designing the grill as we do positioning drive units and everything else. It takes quite a lot of work, but when you get it right, it's a superb combination. So please, when you get any of the Wharfedale Heritage speakers, do listen with the grill on. That's the way they were designed. That's the way they're meant to be heard.
Yeah, Aaron, this speaks to you. In your review, you mentioned, hey, if you're critically listening, listen with the grill on.
Right.
Yeah, so you found that in the measurements as well, which
Yeah.
I found the exact same thing just from subjective listening. I was like, it definitely tones down the highs a little bit.
Right.
Having the grill
Yeah,
on.
it's very rare. Peter, I mean, honestly, I don't know anybody else who designs a speaker to work with the grill, not just as good as your speakers do, but just like they're actually designed to work with the grill on. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. Most of the time, I take my grills off. I've got a storage compartment on my couch. Throw the grills in there, and that's the last time I see them until I sell the speaker.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The retro style design comment is interesting. When I first saw the original Linton prototype, you may not remember this, Peter. We were in Munich at the high-end show. I think that was 2018. You had a working prototype of a Linton, and I was just like, oh, that is so freaking cool. I've been waiting for somebody to do something like that. This was before the whole retro thing kind of really took off in audio. And only you and I were big believers in that. Jamie, Norbert, all these other guys are around. It's like, that's just Peter. He likes old stuff. We don't think it's going to sell very well. And look at where we are now. The retro trend, no signs of slowing down. The Linton has become kind of a modern icon again in loudspeakers. And it's nice to be proven right, I'm sure, that your instincts took you there.
Well, the whole retro thing for Wharfedale kicked off because first of all, we wanted to do an 80th anniversary speaker that reflected Wharfedale's heritage, and I think this particular cabinet design, which was done by a guy called Robert Gutman back in the 60s, is such an iconic design. It's absolutely beautiful to look at. It means that you've got a piece of furniture in your room, a beautifully wood veneered speaker with a luxury grill. It just looks fantastic as a piece of furniture in the room. But also I wanted to capture the sound that I remembered from my youth, which you can only get from big loudspeakers. Even the Denton is a wider loudspeaker than most of the speakers out there. Linton, of course, as you've remarked, is when we introduced it to the sales guys, it looked like a gigantic speaker. Nowadays, it's not considered so big because other people have followed suit and reintroduced the larger loudspeakers that were around in the 60s and 70s. But I'm very pleased to have brought that style of sound back to the hi-fi community because I missed it, and I think a lot of other people did too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's showing no signs of slowing, and you're right, it does have a very particular sound. And there's not there's no replacement for displacement. Is that the saying? You need air displacement. Big woofers make big sound.
Well, it's also to do with the baffle dimensions as well. The larger the baffle, the lower what we call the baffle step. So by making the speaker bigger, we can improve sensitivity and also bring that area, which is the baffle step, closer to the area where you start to get room gain. So it becomes pretty seamless, and that's what you hear.
Interesting. Awesome. Well, another cone related question. Why do you use a dome mid-range versus a traditional cone mid-range?
Well, the domes are great when you just need to use small displacements, because the voice coil is, for instance, on 2-inch dome, the voice coil is very large. It has tremendous transient performance. The dome can be very light, so that again that improves transient attack, and we can get a very, very clean bandwidth out of it. The difficulty is actually designing one. It's not easy. Designing a cone is much, much, much easier. And it took us a long time to get this one right.
Yeah, that was interesting. I was pulling up I like how you guys do the exploded views of all of your drivers and your cabinet for that matter on your website. So we were looking through those. Not everybody does that. It's got great visibility into to exactly what the speakers have to offer.
Well, I learned a long time ago that most people only see what's on the outside of a speaker. And when we started many years ago in doing some cutaways, and just people were going, "Wow, I never knew so much went on inside." So now we like to show what goes on inside.
Yep, it's the best way. Even like amplifiers, if I get my hands on one, I didn't take y'all's apart in the leak audio, but most of them I like to take take them apart and look at it just to see what's going on, because you can tell a lot about construction, what kind of thoughts put into it, what's on the inside. It's on the inside what counts, right?
Yeah.
But let's see.
I am seeing a lot of yeses to center channel in the comments right now.
Hey.
Okay.
You guys got some work to do after this.
I got to go away and start building a prototype.
I hope that Aaron and I didn't influence that bias any, but I
hope I did.
I hope. You know what? I'll take that back.
One commenter said, "Let Aaron help build it." So
no. How about not?
Aaron, we're sending some slabs of wood and a glue gun to you here shortly.
It would look like it's made out of cardboard by a 3-year-old. That's why I don't build speakers. My fabrication skills are terrible.
So Peter, how would you characterize the sonic/design philosophy difference between the Super Denton and another 3-way in the lineup, the Evo 4.2?
That's a good one.
Well, Evo 4.2, it's a larger speaker. It's getting back to that vertical dimension that you talked about. It's a more modern design for Wharfedale in terms of its looks, and we wanted it to have that modern Wharfedale sound as well. The Denton, like I say, we introduced it for the 80th anniversary in order to give me that feeling that I had when I first encountered Wharfedale Dentons in the 60s, and the Denton Super Denton sort of follows along that line. It's a warmer, more I guess, Aaron, you'd agree that it's a more characterful sound.
Yeah.
The Evo 4.2 is probably erring more towards a cleaner studio monitor type sound. The Evo 4.2, of course, has the AMT as a treble unit, which gives it a really airy top end. But it's really, you have to look at what you want out of a speaker at the end of the day. We know that the two designs fall into two camps, and Nick, you've probably heard them both. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, well, I haven't had a chance to hear them all in similar environments, which is the big asterisk for me. So it's hard to make exact comparisons without being able to hear them in identical environments. So I'll reserve my opinions on that one. But no, I agree for the most part.
Yeah, they both share a lot of similar traits, but yeah, I think the biggest difference people will hear right away is that AMT versus the soft dome tweeter. The AMT has more air, it's got more energy. So if you're listening to a lot of EDM, you're probably going to prefer the Evo range. If you're doing a home theater, Evo is also awesome for home theater. There is definitely more character with the Super Denton, which I find interesting, Peter, that you kind of publicly comment on that a bit, because most companies are saying, oh, we're trying to reference back to the original recording and we just want to be totally transparent to the sound. But Super Denton does have a sonic thumbprint on it that's, I find, super compelling. I like what it imparts on music, but it's not a kind of traditionally neutral loudspeaker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a bit, because I think it's important to recognize that no matter how hard you try, it's really difficult to make a loudspeaker or any hi-fi component come to that, which is absolutely truthful to what is coming into the input terminals. And in the end, what you end up with is a device which is bound to have some character. It always does. It doesn't matter what you're designing. It will always have some character. And it's how you manipulate that character in order to get the best out of the music. Because people listening at home are not the same as people listening in recording studios. They're listening at home for pleasure. People listening in recording studios are doing two things. They're trying to lay down something which has an emotional connection to the listener, and they're also trying to put together something which sounds great. And they manipulate the sound in studios to do the same thing. What it goes on to a record or a CD or a stream is not exactly what the microphone's captured. It is a production, and it's a production designed to get the best out of the music. Now, you could say, well, in that case, the hi-fi system should be relaying exactly that. But it never turns out like that, because you're dealing with imperfect components all the way through. You're dealing with a technology which is never perfect, and you're dealing with rooms which are never perfect. So you have, at the end of the day, to try and design something where the character of what you're designing brings the best out of the music, no matter what type of music. It should be allowed. I'm a firm believer that a loudspeaker should reproduce all types of music if it's doing its job properly.
Yeah,
but
100%.
Yeah.
No, I mean, one of the interesting things you always hear people say, oh, I don't like X type of tweeter or X type of woofer or something along those lines. And in my opinion, I think that's completely wrong to say, because they haven't heard many different types of. I've heard some people say, "Oh, paper woofers. That's a bad material to use, and it can be on $100 speaker, it can be used on a $100,000 speaker." Or they don't like soft dome tweeters; they prefer AMTs or something along those lines. Every single one sounds entirely different. Now, they do have exactly what you're saying. They do have their characteristics, but you can't write off an entire system because of one characteristic. But let's see.
Yeah, that vein, it's the sum of the parts too, isn't it?
Like
if you have a metal cone versus a paper cone, they're going to behave differently at some point. So how you integrate them into the speaker design, I personally feel like, is probably more important than just the absolute characteristic of that cone type. But then there are, obviously Peter knows this, so of course I'm preaching to the choir, but this is kind of one of the things I talk about on my channel is, obviously no speaker is perfect. And some speakers, just if we take two very similar sounding speakers in terms of on-axis response, they may not radiate the sound the same way, right? So one may be more narrow than another. And the narrow one may be a better fit for one person's room than another person's room. And then you have preference about how wide you like the sound. And then are you giving up some focus in order to get, a wider soundstage? And all those things I think go into it as well. And, being measurement biased toward the measurements, I should say, I still think that's useful to have that information out there because it can help you understand what it is that you're buying, what it is that you like, and then hopefully make better purchase decisions. But I would never encourage anybody to buy a speaker design based on individual components or based on just the measurements. It's all parts of the whole.
100%. So do you guys, all right, I'll let you guys choose. Do you want a really technical question or do you want a softball question? Hey,
Well,
I'm leaving this up to you.
Let's go for the technical. It's about
All
time.
right, that's what I figured. All right, so we'll go a little bit easier after this. So, and it was even prefaced with this may be too technical to answer here, but are most high-end speakers in the 4 to 6 ohm range and mid 80s in sensitivity, are 90 plus dB and 8 to 16 ohm sensitivities more expensive to produce?
That's, oh boy. Whoever asked that question ought to become a speaker designer, and then they'd find out the difficulties we have. The reason, I mean, I grew up with 8 ohm and 16 ohm speakers that were high sensitivity because they were big. In my youth, and a mid-range driver was 8 inches. A bass driver was 12 inches or 15 inches. You didn't have anything smaller if you wanted a hi-fi speaker. And those high sensitivities, because we're dealing with large drive units, large cabinets, were fairly easy to arrange, even with an 8 ohm speaker. But as speakers got smaller, so we had to drag more power out of the amplifier in order to achieve reasonable listening levels in the room. So that's why everybody went down to 4 ohm loudspeakers in the end, because you're making the amplifier work harder, but you need it in order to get the high sound pressure levels that some people need. Now, why we get high-end speakers that are 4 ohms and still low in sensitivity? Well, the other trade-off is if you've got a speaker that is not so big and you're trying to get down to a very extended bass range. Everybody talks about, I want a speaker that does 20 to 20 kilohertz. Well, not many speakers can get down to 20, but we try to give as much extended bass as possible, because modern lost an earphone here. Modern recordings have very wide bandwidth. So that's forced, to a large extent, speakers to go down in frequency. And once you try to do that, extend the bass down from a small speaker, you need to sacrifice sensitivity in order to do it. So I guess that's why you see a lot of high-end speakers that are 4 ohms and still low sensitivity. Personally, I'm not a great fan, like I said, of making amplifiers work really hard for what they have to do. So sensitivity is one of the things that we try to maximize. And I think if once it starts drifting below 85 decibels, then yeah, I'm not too happy. We try and keep it above that.
And I want to emphasize what Peter just said, that impedance, bass response, sensitivity, physical size, these are all interconnected. So you have to blend those together to find the right compromise. And a lot of companies don't measure, there's no real standard used by all companies. When you see sensitivity ratings of a speaker that uses a 5-inch two-way design and it's 95 dB sensitive and it goes down to 35 hertz, something's not right. Right. And I think Aaron's highlighted that on his channel. Certain speaker models, like, well, they kind of, went 6 dB higher on the sensitivity than what, in reality, you can expect. And look, that's a challenge. I don't know if that's a marketing department thing, because obviously there's customers out there that want to see those numbers. But the reality is it's not hard to do. It's just how big do you want your speakers to be? How hard do you want them to be able to drive an amplifier to drive them? And I think Wharfedale finds that kind of balancing act the right combination for most people. You can certainly find your wish list there, but it's going to be a big speaker.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing is, yeah, with affordable speakers, and again, affordable in this industry is subjective, but some people will release affordable speakers that are very challenging to drive, which completely negates the affordability because you need a very powerful amplifier to be able to drive them. So, but again, if some of you guys didn't understand all of that, Aaron, you need to produce a video explaining that alone. Maybe that would help. Just explaining what specs are.
And I try. Some people don't care.
Yeah, that's true. It looks nice. That's all that matters now.
Yeah. I get it.
So here's my softball question. Can you please discuss how Wharfedale has changed its design philosophy over the years?
We're continually improving materials. That's really what it's all about. Technology's a wonderful thing when you apply it correctly, but I see a lot of people on social media who like buying up old loudspeakers and refurbishing them. And once you start taking speakers apart that were made in the 50s, 60s, and sometimes even in the 70s as well, and you compare them to what a modern speaker looks like inside, you realize that now we're producing speakers which are way more improved in every aspect of their build and their design than the older speakers were. That's not to say that older speakers don't still have something to offer if you like that real vintage sound. But I think what we're going for now is something which realizes the incredible clarity, dynamic range, transient performance of modern recordings. And to do that, you need to use the technology that we have around now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a policy of continuous improvement is what we're looking for. But the Wharfedale sound still has to remain the Wharfedale sound. It's always been the same since Gilbert Briggs started the company. It's all about the music. It's all about bringing out the attractiveness of the music. And no matter what style of music, it should really perform and give you hours of listening pleasure.
Exactly. Well, you guys also have something new on the cusp that I want to discuss before we get ready to run out of time. So you've got a new speaker coming out, the Aston. So who wants to touch on that, John or Peter? Would either one?
Well, I'll just say Astons are finally on the way. It's been kind of soft launched before a number of years ago at Munich, and I think Peter has been given a lot of time to really kind of max out this classic 6-inch two-way design. So we're excited to have it. I believe they're on the water from the UK. These are made in England, which is similar to the Dovedale, which is a much larger loudspeaker, even bigger than Super Linton. But honestly, I'm just excited to hear them. I haven't even had a chance to hear these yet, so I'd love to hear what Peter has to say.
Well, this was a little personal project of mine that came out of something that you guys at MoFi wanted, and that was a small speaker that sounded big, and I love doing that. I mean, I've designed speakers before where people have come in the demonstration room and they've gone hunting around looking for a subwoofer because they can't believe that a small speaker can make as big a sound. And so Aston, fulfills my dream of doing that. And we took a lot of the work that we'd done on the research of the Dovedale, and some of the work that we'd done on the Linton as well, and we channeled all that into a small speaker that really, I mean, it's difficult to describe what the speaker can do, but you can play it at low levels and listen to it lying on the floor at night, and it will just be gorgeous to listen to, and then you can turn it up and really dance around the room to it and have the fun of your life doing so. So it's been a fun design. It's probably, if Erin measured it, he'd probably find one or two things to criticize about the frequency response, but look at the, if you do ever measure one, Erin, look at the power response, because that's what really matters.
Yeah.
The power response is really good. The dynamic response is really good. It's a small speaker that sounds huge.
And we got to see if we can get Erin one. How many pair are coming into the US, John?
Well, so Wharfedale has chosen to limit this to 500 pairs worldwide. We were able to get an allocation of 130 pairs total, which are all on the way. I believe Audio Advice secured a good quantity as well, 20 pairs.
Yeah, somewhere right around 20 pair.
Yeah, but once they're gone, sort of thing, which I don't know. It's a shame, but get them while you can, I guess. What did we settle on? 2,500 a pair with stands? Does that sound right, Nick?
That sounds right. I definitely should have reviewed that before this.
Yeah, I think that's right. Same here. But and they only come with the stands. So Peter, can you comment on the stands a bit? Those are also made in the UK.
The stands were specially designed to support the speaker correctly. They're torsionally rigid stands. They're attractive, nice, attractive ones. They've got a glass plate in the bottom. And they're exactly the right height to bring the speakers up to the perfect listening level.
And yet they are 2,500.
So you're a tall guy, Peter. I mean, isn't it different for everybody?
Well, when you're a couple of meters away from a speaker, you don't have to worry about the odd centimeter here or there.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, again, my shameless plug for our website. We're gonna probably throw the link in the description or the comment section for this. So yeah, everybody take a look at them. Like I said, they're gorgeous speakers. I'm ready to hear them. So if we've got a pair that's sitting around, if they're not pre-sold, we may have to send one over Erin's way to test it out.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So awesome. Well, let's go over.
I need some Dovedales. I need all of the Elysians. I need the Evos. Just back the truck up, you know?
I think it'd be easier for you to bring the Clipple to our warehouse in Las Vegas, Erin.
I could probably do that. I've moved it 3 times already, so.
So let's see. So I'm currently using Denton's 85th, Denton 85th in my system. I've been considering the Super Denton as an upgrade. How would you describe the difference between those two speakers?
It's really the extra clarity and punch in the mid-range that dome mid-range gives you. That's the biggest difference.
Mm-hmm. And I'm making you describe a lot of the differences between a lot of the speakers throughout this, but no, it's super helpful to have for somebody who is designing these speakers what the characteristic, because if you design one perfect speaker, then you only need one speaker, right? But
I've got a question for Peter. So and I hate to put you on the spot, but so when you say, you know, it gives extra punch in the mid-range and extra clarity, as somebody who is looking for those kind of details in measurements, like, so let's say I hear it and I say, oh yeah, I totally agree. That's what I hear. Would you tend to find something like that in the frequency response, sound power, things of that nature? Or do you tend to find it in terms of distortion, IMD, multi-tone distortion, or even harmonic distortion?
Yes, both of those.
Okay.
In terms of, you know, I'm always looking at power in the room.
Okay.
I'm not interested in frequency response except as a design tool. I think as an analytical tool, the frequency response is useless. It doesn't tell you what a speaker sounds like. I mean, I could put 2 speakers in front of you, Erin, which measured identically. One would sound horrible and one would sound great. It's easy for a designer to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, it's easy for a designer to make something which measures flat and sounds horrible. It's more difficult to make something which measures flat and sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when you're listening in your room, it's the power response that matters.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, you do plots which show the directivity index. That's always an interesting one to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh, sorry.
yeah. If you okay. Bring that up. Bring that up.
All right, so I clicked it a little too
That wasn't
fast.
my intent. I was just like, hey, where would you go and look for these kind of things? But okay.
All right. So
Yeah,
we've got
so if you look at the frequency response, it doesn't look that great. But come on, guys, this is measured at 1 meter. Or actually with the Klippel system, it's not measured at 1 meter. It's extrapolated to 1 meter. It's not an indication of how the speaker measures in a room. It's not a good indication of how the speaker will sound. But that red line at the bottom, which is the sound power, that is a much better indication of how smooth the speaker actually is in terms of its overall power response in the room. And for those of you who don't know, the power response in a room is designed to fall towards high frequencies. It's not designed to be flat. If you have a flat power response in a room, it sounds way too bright. It doesn't sound natural. So that is a design response. You got any comments about that, Aaron?
Well, just one minor correction. So that's actually it's referenced back to 1 meter, but the measurement is projected out to 2 meters. So
right, okay.
But for that speaker, it probably doesn't matter too much. Yeah, I tend to find, and it's very interesting. Some of the speakers that I've been reviewing as of late, the designers tend to target the estimated in-room response as being more neutral, which means that sometimes they give up a little bit more in the on-axis frequency response. But I find that works. Personally speaking, I like a speaker that has a more neutral estimated in-room response, which is close to the sound power that you're talking about. So, and in one case recently, there was a manufacturer who had their tweeter was rolled off. I don't even know if I'd consider it rolled off, but the level on the tweeter was very low compared to the mid-range. But when you go and look at the directivity, you understand why, because it basically becomes constant directivity. So if they had it flat in the high frequency, then it would have sounded bright in the room. But because they made the high frequency adjustment to not make it flat, then it lines up with the mid-range in the in-room response. So this is what I find really interesting about measurements and things of that nature is, if you, like you said, you can take two different speakers that sound completely different and have the same on-axis response. And people sometimes don't quite grasp that there are other things that go on that are sent out into the room and come back to your listening position.
Mm-hmm. You want me to throw a piece of controversy in here?
No.
We got a comment on here. Isn't that what room correction's for?
Nope.
I thought the controversial question was going to be the how do you grow that mustache, Nick?
Oh, I didn't see who left that. It's time and eat your vegetables. No, but
I don't know how you feel, Aaron, about room correction. Room correction's great if you've got bass problems.
Yeah.
But bear in mind that if you do room correction in the bass, it's going to eat up your amplifier power big time. If you do room correction in the bass, you need a bigger amplifier. But room correction for the rest of the performance, I think it's very difficult to get it right, and you should be pretty careful not to try and overcome every little dip and peak that you see, right. Because you end up with a system which just sounds wrong at the end of the day. Maybe as time goes on, we can start, getting room correction, which does the whole frequency range, but at the moment it's not quite there yet. It is getting better all the time, but it's not quite there yet.
Yeah, so I use a lot of room correction in home theater. We're dealing with a lot of different channels. We're putting screens in front of things. We've got a lot of different seating positions. So, we definitely lean on room correction. It's not a Band-Aid for everything. Even in theater, you have to take the proper, steps with amplifiers. You have to take it with room treatments. You have to take it with, alignment. It works really well, but just as Peter was saying, you can mess up things just as easy as you fix them with room correction. So,
sure.
There's something called curtains that you can use. So if you just want to adjust your, bass response inside the room, you can do that, or without touching your high frequencies, which could be super helpful because you can make a speaker sound very unnatural very, very quickly if you try to overcorrect it past where it wants to be corrected. But DSP is a great tool, but with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Yeah, and also, like I said, if you give everything an easier time, including the amplifier, including the DSP, including room correction, if it's given an easier time, it has less work to do. If it has less work to do, it's better off at doing what it's supposed to do, and that's letting you hear the music. So,
Yeah.
don't try and take a speaker which does things badly and try and improve it through room correction. You're just going to tie up all that amplifier power into doing things which really aren't necessary.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's important to note too that there's a difference between room correction and speaker correction. So
Yep. So, well, guys, this has been a really quick conversation. I feel like it just started, but so let's get away to some giveaway winners. And again, everybody on here, I thank everybody for joining in and watching us. Peter, John, Aaron, thank you guys so much for coming on. Check out Aaron's channel as well. If you guys haven't, from our audience, definitely take a look at it. You learn a lot and really gain some cool insight inside of speaker measurements. So we'll go ahead and kick it off with the best question winner. So this is for the Spin Clean Beatles edition, and it was Koman Elahi. It was Peter. How do you characterize the sonic design philosophy differences between the Super Dentons and another three-way within the lineup, the Evo 4.2? There we go. I got my team to pull it up. So that was a great question. So reach out to us. We'll get you set up with the Spin Clean. And so on to our winner for the Super Dentons. Sorry, give me 1 second. We need a drum roll effect to go in here. Let's see. So
I sound like a motor. Like a boat.
So the winner is John Stemwoodell. So John Stemwoodell in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So reach out to us. We'll get you a new set of speakers. And like I said, you're a lucky winner. You're going to enjoy these a lot. So again, thank you everybody for joining in. And we look forward to seeing you next month, where we do have another giveaway. So next month's also going to be special in celebration of Record Store Day. We're going to be teaming up with Techniques for fun little turntables and talk about albums and such. So look forward to seeing you all there. So thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Good to meet you guys. Bye.